the purpose of the first assignment is to get you started with setting up a development environment and also creating the first React.js application and get you going with learning about HTML, some of the more simpler tags, right, that we're going to be using throughout the semester, just to get us up to speed and all on the same page, right? Okay, so the first thing that this assignment, Luca, you had a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a quick question. Whatever you write in terms of code during the semester, like during the lecture, will that be on Canvas or we have to follow along?
All this code that I write will always be available on GitHub. So at the end of every lecture, I'm just going to push it to a repository and I'm going to share it. And you're welcome to reuse all that code for yourself for completing your own assignment. You're welcome to copy that content to get you going with the assignment. Also for the project, when I start working on the prototype, that also will be shared. And that too, you're welcome to reuse as you see fit.
Thank you. I just wanted to check so that I don't have to write along with you. So that
absolutely.
I can just
No.
Look at your screen. Thank you.
Excellent. Sure. Right. So the first set of things that we ask you to do is to install Node.js, right? And to get you going to get to install to create your first React application, right? So I'll demonstrate here for you, and then you can then practice it on your own, right? So let me get going with a terminal window. Can you all see my terminal window? Make this a little bigger.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to go into, I believe I'm in my home directory. So in your home directory, you can create a directory for Northeastern, right? So I have one called NEU. So I'm just going to go into NEU. In there, I have different years, right? And then different semesters. So I'm just going to go into 2023. And I have one directory for summer one. So I'm going to go to summer one. Right. So in here, we'll create our first application, right, using npx. Right. So this one asks you to create those directories. You might want to call it web dev or however you want, and then do all your work within web dev directory. You can basically create it wherever you want, as long as you remember where is it that you put it. Okay. So I'm going to use npx, right, to create the application using this command, npx create react app. So the application that we're going to be building throughout the semester is inspired on a popular social network. The application is called Tuiter. Okay, and again, it's inspired on a social network that I'm not allowed to mention. So I'm gonna change my name a little bit different so that I remember what section this is. Right? So this is for I'll call it Tuiter React Web App. Right. This is to distinguish it from later on. We'll create a server application. Right. That it'll be the kind of like a second half. Right. To this application. Right? Because remember, a web application typically has multiple tiers, right? You have the front end tier, right? That will the user interface, right? You have the middle tier that usually is a server. Ours is going to be implemented using Node.js, but it could be a C# server, Python server, a Java server, right? We're going to be using Node.js, but that's going to be in the second half of the semester. So we're going to be focusing on the client side of a client server application in the first half of the semester. So here's our client application that we're building. So yes, Tuiter React Web App. Later on, we'll create a Tuiter server app, right? And so I'm going to call this Summer 1, right, 2023, right? So that's going to go up for a little bit. And what this is going to do is that it's going to come and copy from a repository, a public repository that you can find here. It's in npm.js.org. So npm.js is it's a repository. It's a public repository where folks can share all sorts of libraries and modules, right? That folks can lots and lots of open source projects are in there, including the Create React App. So Create React App, right? It's a tool that is published by Facebook, right? The inventors of React.js, right? And so they created this tool that creates a boilerplate project, right? That it's already ready to go, right? It's already linked, already has downloaded all the dependencies that you don't have to do it on your own. It already sets up the Node.js server that is going to host your application locally on your machine, as well as automates all sorts of things such as compiling code and redeploying it whenever you make a change, right? So yeah, let's see, is it done? Yeah, it's done. So once it's done creating this, we see that it creates a folder with the project that we just created, right? And we can go in there. We can say cd into that application, right? And if you look at the content here, this is a standard Node project, right? Because a React project is a Node project that happens to be a user interface, right? Using React.js and using JavaScript to render this on a browser. But a React.js project is a Node project, right? Later on, we'll create other types of Node projects that are server projects, right? That are meant to be the middle tier in a client-server application. Okay. So this one's already ready to go. Now, the reason I know it's a Node project is that it has a package JSON. See that? That gives it away immediately that this is a Node project, right? Just like, if you go to a Python project or you go to a Java project, right? You'll find certain, for instance, in a Java project, you would typically find like a POM file, right? POM.xml file. That tells you right away that it's a Java project, right? Let's see, Kash, you have a question?
Yes, sir. I had a quick question about this assignment one, the point breakdown. I'm a little confused. So the first 50 points are assigned for the lab, which are we essentially recreating what you have provided us there? Because it's mentioned something about hand-holding and how we're being given the examples. So do we recreate, essentially type out the same code that you've provided, and then the second half, that's the part where we produce something similar that looks like.
Excellent question. Yep, beautiful, excellent question. Thank you. Yeah, so all the assignments follow more or less the same layout, and they'll have the first half of the assignment will be a lab that it's mostly for you to practice certain criteria or certain topics that we covered in class, right? And this gives you a chance to see a piece of code that already works, right? And you're welcome to copy it straight from the assignment, paste it on your source code, right? And try it out, see if it works, right? You might need to tweak it a little bit. But yeah, the first half of the assignment is a lot of hand-holding. We tell you exactly what to do, right? And you just have to follow the instructions. Now, the second half of the assignment, and all assignments follow the same pattern. So the labs is just a lot of hand-holding. Try this out. There's a lot of examples that they're all self-contained, right? They're not building anything in particular, right? They're just making a point, right, of a particular piece of technology. Now, in the second half, there's a Tuiter, right, where you are asked to, on your own, right, having practiced the labs, right, having practiced all these disparate examples, right, it says, okay, well, now try to use what you just learned, right, to build something, okay? And what we're going to be building throughout multiple assignments, right, assignment 1, 2, 3, we're all going to be building the same thing. We're going to be building this Tuiter application, right? And we're all going to be building the same thing. right? But on our own, right? So using what we learned in the labs, right? And I gave you the requirements, right? That hey, you have to create a navigation a set of links that allow you to navigate to different screens in the Tuiter application. I ask you to implement a home screen, right? That is going to have maybe a picture of yourself, a small little form with a drop down, and displaying just a few tweets, right? Tweets, okay. And notice it's not style. It's using the default look and feel of browsers, which is pretty lame, right? That it's using Times New Roman. It looks pretty ugly, right? With before we style it, before we apply CSS, before we apply CSS libraries, it looks pretty unprofessional. And you create a few things, other things like the profile screen. So I ask you, this is what it's supposed to look like, right? And then on your own, you go out and actually implement that. I do give you some leeway, saying, well, it doesn't have to look exactly the same. Like instead of this image, maybe you can use your own image, right? Instead of this piece of text, then you could use maybe your piece of text, right? So instead of being 123, you can use something else, right? But I kind of try to explain what you can change and you cannot change. Like for instance, it has to have an image. It has to have that size, right? This image has to be 48 by 48. Okay, so it has to be square. So I give you some parameters with it from within. You have some wiggle room, and so again, this bio is different. You can create your own bio and things like that. And this is the same pattern that you will find across all the assignments, right? So this first assignment is learning about HTML and then using it to build Tuiter, to set up the layout of Tuiter. In the second assignment, you learn about CSS and Bootstrap, how to style things, how to make things background color, foreground color, fonts, sizes, how to position things, how to lay it out vertically and horizontally, and things like that, how to lay it out in a grid, right? And then in the second half of the assignment, I say, well, now apply the CSS and Bootstrap, right, to make Tuiter looks a little prettier, right? So that we style the font color and the foreground color and the border colors and things like that, and nice grayed out, and we have some padding and some margins so that things are not flushed against each other and things like that. We separate content, looks prettier, right? So, and you'll find that pattern over and over in every single assignment. Okay. So yeah, good points from our colleague.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that helps. Excellent questions. Thank you. Yeah, so let's get going. Let's create our boilerplate application, which we just did. So once we create it, it creates this folder called Tuiter React Web App. Now you can go in there. You can now CD into that directory. So we're already in there, and the way we know this is a React application, a Node.js application, that it has package.js, and also we know that it's a Node application, but it has Node_modules. That is a standard name for a folder that has all the libraries, right? All the compiled code that this particular project depends on, right? It downloads all the libraries and puts it under Node_modules. Anyway, we can start this. We can run this code by using another Node command called npm, right? So we learn about npx and we learn about npm, right? So npm stands for Node Package Manager, right? Which allows you to install packages, right? Node packages, JavaScript packages, download from npm, right? And then install them locally. It also allows you to run or execute code locally. And npx is the same as npm, but it doesn't download and install things. It executes, and that's the X, right? X means, use this package and execute it, run it right away. Don't just cache it locally, as opposed to npm allows you to cache all that library locally and keep them in your file system. We use npx to run the create React app module and create an application for us, but not cache any of that here. So NPM allows you to run scripts and things that are part of that project. So one of those scripts is a start script, which is already implemented here, and which starts up the server, starts up a local Node.js server, and is going to host our HTML, our React.js, our JavaScript, locally on our machine at a particular port. So let's do that. NPM start. It's going to kick off the Node.js server. It's going to make sure that the dependencies are okay, and opens up a tab, and boom, here we have the boilerplate, right? The hello world React.js application, which is already, has already been optimized. It has already been set up, right? With it, it's all the best practices for you to start implementing, good React.js applications. Everybody good?